Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Yuzu, and Yuzu just released their progress report for December. I'll drop a link to it in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. It's very well written, and we're just going over it at a high level. First on the report, and no surprises, Vulkan. There was a ton of work done on this back end to make things better. So for Yuzu on PC, the developers are saying anyone using an NVIDIA GPU, regardless of operating system, feel free to update to the latest release for your platform. Furthermore, if you're using handheld mode, games like Fight and Rage were cut in half, and now they're not. Asynchronous presentation was fixed, improving latency and also frame rates. There was a fix for the buffer row length, which ended up fixing games like King of Fighters 13 and also the pizza minigame from Mario Party Superstars. There were also a few fixes for OpenGL, which ended up fixing stuff like shadows in Metroid Prime Remastered and all of these characters in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now for Linux and Android, there were some very amazing improvements. One here is saving RAM and making games boot faster. There was a change to remove the requirement of needing 3 GB of free RAM immediately after booting a game, and also to significantly decrease boot times while at it. Surprisingly, they were even able to get Celeste to work on devices with 4 gigs of RAM for a time. They say while the system doesn't need to provide the full 3 GB at game boot now, the game will still slowly demand the amount as it runs. But this might be enough to let 8 GB devices, or even 6 GB ones, which they don't officially support, to reach the next save point. It's worth pointing out, and being realistic here, if you've got a device with 4 or 6 gigs of RAM, chances are you'll never be able to fully enjoy Yuzu. The developers could optimize this emulator a million times over, and those devices still won't be powerful enough. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom requires 12 gigs of RAM to fully enjoy it. And that's not even factoring in the CPU part of it. But moving on from that and still talking about Android, they made some changes here to improve the performance for Super Mario Odyssey. And the NCE backend now works with N64 on NSO. Also for Android, they've implemented game properties. All you have to do is long press on a game. In there, you can check out per game settings, add-ons, and DLC, and even more. The development team ended up testing out a brand new Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 CPU via a Red Magic 9. It's got the Adreno 750 GPU in it, and they compared it with a Red Magic 8 with an Adreno 740. And the results here are extremely impressive, surprisingly impressive. So here's the before with the Adreno 740, 36.2 FPS. And here's the after, the brand new Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. 60.5 FPS in the exact same place. On a side note, the developers say to keep up to date with turnip releases, they usually only bring improvements, and that's for the Snapdragon CPU with the Adreno GPU. If you don't have a Snapdragon processor, chances are you've got a Mali GPU. And things look to be getting better from Mali. Mali officially backs Mesa, and the Yuzu development team thinks things are going to get a lot better. And on top of that, there were a number of bug fixes and even more. We only went over a portion of what's in here. Go on ahead and check it out. The Yuzu development team had an amazing month. Heck, they had an amazing year. And I can't wait to see what they do next. Hats off to the development team. Next up, we're talking about a number of DMCA takedowns, and the first one here is for Portal 64. For those who may be unaware, we've talked about it in previous videos, but this was a demake or a port of Portal to the N64. So James Lambert, the developer behind the very impressive Portal 64, was in talks with Valve. And James says because the project depends on Nintendo's proprietary libraries, they, being Valve, not Nintendo, have asked me to take the project down. In my opinion, if it wasn't Valve, it would have eventually been Nintendo, if and when Nintendo found out that Portal 64 was using their proprietary libraries. I figured Nintendo would probably issue a DMCA on their own. Unfortunately, unless there's some sort of miracle, I think this is the end for Portal 64, but it was released on the internet, and as soon as something is released on the internet, it's kind of there forever. And speaking about Valve, and also DMCAs, next up we're talking about Valve, who issued another DMCA. And this one is to Team Fortress Source 2, which was a fan port of Team Fortress to the Source 2 engine. Now this may not be as bad as you'd think. The project was already kind of going downhill. The Team Fortress Source 2 team says, while we were discussing the project's future internally recently, We already came to the conclusion to stop the development of the project due to the current state of the code being unusable, and we overall moved on from it. Sadly, this means the DMCA takedown is the nail in the coffin. We cannot bring it back, and we've hit Valve's attention. It seems like they definitely don't want us to use their IP, which tells me if this DMCA didn't happen, the project was probably going to stop anyway, unless I'm misunderstanding things. And continuing to talk about DMCAs, next up we're talking about Tachiyomi. I might have mispronounced that. This is a full-feature reader that just received a big change. They say right here on their website, due to extenuating circumstances, we have made the decision to purge our list of extensions to ensure the long-term sustainability of Tachiyomi. As of now, Tachiyomi is transitioning to a full bring-your-own-content model. What this means is that you can still enjoy Tachiyomi for manga reading, but you'll need to source and add your own content. I'm assuming this is going to be frustrating for a lot of people who use Tachiyomi, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, think about an emulator. If it provided all of the ROMs, it would be taken down pretty quick. Moving on, and we're talking about Atari, and it appears a whole bunch of brand new Atari branded consoles, including a handheld, have been unveiled. They're calling this one the Atari Gamestation Portable. It's got an integrated paddle, a trackball, and licensed games. And on top of that, in the bottom right hand corner, there's also a keypad. This thing will be releasing towards the end of the year, and I'm very curious to see what emulators it's using. Next up, this is a real quick one. If you play Dead by Daylight, you may or may not be excited that Alan Wake is joining the game as a survivor. He'll be hitting the game as of January 30th, and to me this is a perfect pairing. Next up, I find this one extremely interesting. There's a Game Boy port of Unlinked Mask in development, and it's looking really good. For those who may not be aware, the original game is up on Steam, and it's called Linked Mask. I don't know why the Game Boy port is called Unlinked Mask. Anyways, here it's a very difficult platformer, a Kaizo platformer. No surprise here, this game does have mixed reviews, and a lot of the bad reviews are from people finding the game too difficult, which is what it's intended to be. It's intended to be unfair, punishing, and frustrating. Next up, we're quickly talking about Twitch, and it appears Twitch is getting ready for a massive cut. 35% of their staff, or about 500 people. They're one of many companies towards the end of last year and this year laying off or firing people. Now, in my opinion, based on this information, Twitch is in some serious trouble. I mean, laying off 35% of your workforce or 500 people is quite a bit, especially added to the 400 they laid off last year. My question is, after laying off so many people, how are they still able to function? Next up, we're talking about AI and Steam, and Steam has published brand new guidelines for games that use AI. So there are two main categories for games with AI: pre-generated, which means the game was made using AI, and live-generated, which means content is generated by AI while the game is running. It appears that Steam's goal for both categories is to ensure games are not including illegal or infringing content based on what the AI is doing. And secondly, Steam is releasing a new system that allows players to report illegal content inside games that contain live-generated AI content. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up, we're quickly talking about Minecraft Legends, and based on a recent blog post, development for this game has finished. So what this basically means is there's going to be no more additional content, DLC skins, nothing for Minecraft Legends. What you see is what you get. Well, this obviously sucks for people who wanted to see more from the game. If you're already a fan of the game and happy with it, well, you don't have much to worry about, at least not for the foreseeable future. They say our existing Lost Legends challenges will remain available for free, and you'll still be able to reap the rewards if you claim victory. We will, of course, continue to offer technical support to players, and we won't be removing any functionalities or features from the game. PvP and co-op will also remain fully functional. So while the game won't be getting any better, arguably it's not going to get any worse. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions, Linux Mint. And Linux Mint just released version 21.3 Virginia. This one has Cinnamon 6.0 and also experimental Wayland support. I do distro hop quite a bit just to check out different distributions of Linux, but I usually end up back on Mint. Right now I'm using Mint 21.2 and I might check out 21.3. 21.3 is supported until 2027. And speaking about long-term support and also Linux, next up we're talking about Ubuntu, which is the distribution Linux Mint is built on. And Ubuntu 22.04 LTS users can now upgrade to Linux kernel 6.5. This may be handy if you're a gamer and you're trying to get every ounce of performance out of your machine possible. For those of you using the Asus ROG Ally and putting Linux on it, kernel 6.5 supports working sound for the ROG Ally. And speaking about Linux and gaming handhelds, next up we're talking about AYANEO, and AYANEO has just unveiled the AYANEO Next LITE, running SteamOS. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know how they got SteamOS on this device, but I'm not complaining. Anyways, this will have Hall effect joysticks. It'll have a 7-inch screen that runs at 800p and a 47 watt-hour battery, although I don't know what CPU's in it and I don't know the price. It seems that the AYANEO Next LITE is taking the value approach, the cost-effectiveness approach. And subscriptions open at 9:30 p.m. tomorrow. This one has obviously piqued my interest and I'm curious to find out more information. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Do you think this would be a viable, possibly cheaper price Steam Deck? And last up, we're talking about Capcom, and according to PC Focus, Capcom has started adding DRM to their back catalog of games. This DRM prevents modding, prevents cheating, and as PC Focus claims, reduces performance by up to 10 to 15 FPS. What I find crazy about this is it was reported it was added into Resident Evil Revelations, a game that was released back in 2013. It's almost 11 years old. Why on earth would you introduce DRM that prevents modding and cheating in such an old game? Why would you care? If it was me, I'd be happy people were willing to cheat and mod in such an old game and willing to give it attention still. I don't know about you, but I'll be paying attention to the Steam charts to see if this introduced DRM reduces the amount of people playing the game. I wish I could say I was surprised, but based on the video that Capcom posted a few months back, I'm not surprised at all. Maybe a little surprised they'd add it to such an old game. Moving forward, I think Capcom is going to continue on with this behavior, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot more of their backlog get DRM. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Does it even make sense? But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.